Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage, Episode 57, Daniel and Mists of Eldoria. Alright, hi Daniel. I'm here to talk to you about your campaign, Mists of Eldoria. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks.
Alright. Well, before we get started on the campaign RPG discussion, can you tell us a little bit about who you are outside of RPGs?
Sure. Well, I run my own company, a local service company, and I am a voice actor going on 11 years at this point.
Oh, cool.
And basically, I always have projects going on in various different directions. I don't really feel right if I don't have three projects going on at the same time.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Well, I mean, that's sort of like two different things there, the voice acting and your own company.
Yep.
I guess for the voice acting stuff, is this anything that the broader public would instantly recognize? What's a role that you're proud of?
Proud of. Well, mostly I made commercials
Hmm.
and YouTube ads or something like that. But I do have a few smaller roles for internet animation videos, and I got to play the Penguin once in a Batman audio drama. That was pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's fun. And your own company, you talked a little bit about snow blowing with me before we started the interview, or snow plowing. Sorry, I said the wrong word there.
Snow clearing, I think, would be the right.
Okay.
Yeah, I do window cleaning, and then of course in the winter snow clearing, and
Okay.
I wouldn't know what the English word for that would be, but uh, salting the walkways so that people don't slip and fall.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, probably snow clearing would be the right
yeah,
English phrase too. I'm not quite sure. I
no,
I live in California, which does get snow in parts of it, but not where I live.
no.
Yeah, we had a high of 60 Fahrenheit today, which is 18 Celsius.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, so no snow.
Yeah,
We never get snow.
no. We're in California.
I'm around Sacramento. I'm in Davis.
Oh, okay.
So it's in the center. So our summers get up to 40, 42, and winter usually doesn't go below 15 for the high. Um, Maybe 0 for the low.
Sure.
I'm a scientist, so I actually know Celsius stuff instead of just having the Fahrenheit brain that most Americans have.
Yeah, interesting. What field?
Biology. I did disease research for a while, and now I work for the California's healthcare department. Well, yeah, let's talk about RPGs. So,
Yeah,
what got you into like the RPG D&D space?
I guess the general pop culture. I always knew it was a thing, but I never tried it. And then I would see television shows or internet posts or something where they talked about it, and it just always appealed to me.
Hmm.
No one around me played or anything, so I pretty much had to start it myself. So I just started asking people, "Do you want to get into it with me?" And then it kind of grew from there.
Okay, so typically that means if you're the one bringing other people into the hobby when you want to start, that you're also the one that's the DM or game master for it. Is that what you did initially?
Oh yeah, all the time. I've never been a player.
Oh, wow, never been a player. Okay.
Well, that's not true. I was invited for a single episode on a podcast once with it, but that's
Okay.
that's everything.
That's Yeah, a single episode and it being a podcast performance is a bit different than playing in a more real campaign.
Yeah,
Well, cool. That's kind of interesting. Do you feel like you've ever wanted to be a player, or do you really enjoy the just being a DM?
I do enjoy being a DM immensely, but at some point I would like to be a player in a in a in a campaign of some sort.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to not have as much homework each time.
Yes. Yeah. That is much less work to be a player for sure.
Yeah,
And you said you're in Denmark, is that right?
that's right.
What's like in the US, there's like, game shops where you can go and kind of like find a community where you can play and just like drop in and play. Is there anything like that in Denmark or not so much?
Well, there are, but there's not many of them, and they are pretty far between. There is
Hmm.
one in the city where I live, but I have a feeling that most of the playing that's going on there is Magic the Gathering or something similar.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. That is much more common than D&D
Yeah,
nights for sure.
yeah.
Okay. So when did you start the Mists of Eldoria project? How did that begin?
I guess that would be around 4 years ago. Yeah, around 4 years ago, I started a group with some friends, and well, just started creating a world, and we played. I think to level 5 or 6 before the group kind of fell apart. And then when I got the new group that I'm playing with now, actually the two new groups that I'm playing with now, then I just kind of reused it, but re- reshaped it, made it a lot more rich in lore, and expanded the world, and just kind of went a little bit overboard with the lore and background, and with the world building.
Okay. So it started off as just like a home campaign, and then you expanded it into the project that it is today.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I do want to talk about the world itself, but why don't you tell us about what the project is? Because your presentation of the world is a bit different than other places that I've seen.
In what way do you mean the presentation?
You're having it as sort of a community available world through your Patreon kind of thing, like that aspect of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like to share what I make with people, and it just made sense that with all the work that I put in it, then I thought that other people might want to benefit from it or want to play through the campaign. So I just started putting it online, and then I got some ideas for some YouTube videos and some TikTok videos, and then I just kind of started making those. And well, it's only been like 4 5 months since I did that, but it's already starting to gather a little bit of a community, as you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. You, you were sick for one of those months there, so
Yeah, yeah, pneumonia. That wasn't very fun.
no, I imagine not. Um, well, yeah. So it just started off as this idea of like you wanting to share what you were making. Like your Patreon previously, I remember was doing like the sort of D&D props kind of stuff because you posted about that previously, and I did see those. I remember those.
Well, that actually kind of came after. I started out with Mists of Eldoria, but the props they just kind of took off when I started making those. Then people were really engaged with those, so I just kind of went with those for a while. Um, Now I'm kind of getting back into the campaign, but well, there's still a pretty big demand for the props and for new uh, props that I make. So as I said, I kind of have multiple projects going on at all times.
Hmm. And I guess I didn't know that about the props. I thought they'd come first, but I guess that's just how I had found you in the first
Yeah,
place.
sure.
Um, for those, are you making those to sell or just to like tinker and then show people how to make them?
Well, I actually make them specifically for the campaign for my own players.
Hmm.
When like in the last session we had, they came across an old automaton that was broken, and they found a broken crystal inside it, the crystal that used to power it. And then I just handed them a real life broken crystal that I'd made, and then they just well, they know me, so they knew that they had to find the other half, and then they would travel through a dungeon and go through a session there, and then when they found the other half and put them together, then the prop would light up in real world. And that's kind of what I do. Go a little bit overboard with pretty much everything, and then again, I've made the work in creating this, and then I might as well share it with everyone. So the 3D files to 3D printed and instructions on how to assemble it everything goes on my Patreon for free, and I just I just want other people to use it. I do sell them on my Etsy store though, for those who just want to buy them.
Yeah, they are really cool. I play remotely with my group now, so
Hmm.
physical props are not something I really get to enjoy in the same way. But
No,
when I was playing in person, when I was first met my group, it was really cool to have physical props. I like that a lot.
yeah,
Yeah, yours have a very real magic feel to them. Like what I was doing was like maps or journals or stuff like that, or we had like a newspaper, so it was more like a document. But having like a glowing crystal is much more evocative of what D&D is, in a separation from the real world.
yeah. That's what I like about it. It to me it helps with the immersion and the role playing and everything.
Okay, so you did the props as like a additional thing, but you started off with the Mists of Eldoria campaign.
Yeah,
So yeah, let's talk about the campaign. So the first bit that I noticed for it is that it is sort of it's still kind of Faerun, like it's separate, but you said it's like an extra continent, because Faerun is just one of the continents on Toril,
mm.
so it's like a sort of Atlantis within
Yeah.
that setting.
Basically, yes.
Why did you want to do Faerun instead of just doing something that's its own world?
I guess it's because that when I first started creating the campaign, I was very new as a DM, and I wasn't really that acquainted with the rules and the world setting, and I didn't want to create a world that didn't match with the rules and yeah, well, the handbook basically. So
Hmm.
I wanted my players. The first time I played it, I one of my players was a he was very thorough. He started later than I, but he could quote the handbook and several other of the texts by heart uh, by session three, simply because he just liked studying so much. So I basically just told him, uh, whenever you want to know about how the world is, well, it's basically the real D&D world. You just have to. This is just a place that hasn't been well available for 1,000
Uh-huh.
years or so.
Okay. One thing I remember when I was first DMing, it didn't have like a super complicated homebrew setting that I've developed over decades.
Mhm.
Um, was just like the deities, like because those exist within like the Forgotten Realms, and taking them somewhere else feels like it's a little strange. So kind of adapting that makes sense because then you don't have to come up with your own gods.
Yeah,
And is that true for Eldoria too, where there's still like the same pantheon of gods that the people living there have access to?
it's funny that you should mention that, because religion is something that I usually stay away from, because I have absolutely no imagination when it comes to that. I even in the short stories and novels that I'm also writing, there
Hmm.
is no focus on religion at all. I simply can't write that. so so it was a kind of a cheat to just get around that, and just let people, well, if you're a cleric or if you have a connection to the deity, well, that's on you. Go read the text if you want more information about that. I don't want to be a part of that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's go with your strengths, right? And
Yeah,
if that's not one of them, then don't make it the focus.
exactly.
Right on. Okay. So that explains why the Faerun, because then if there's a hole, then you can point people to the place to fill the hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. Why don't you tell us about Eldoria then? Give a start from the Dawn Strider or like from a physical description. Which do you think would work better?
Well, I think maybe some information about the continent. Um,
Okay,
do you
go
want
for it.
it spoiler free or with the true information for DMs or
Oh,
the
that's
or
a
the
good
or the, or
question.
the version players get to know it first?
Well, I had planned on doing the spoiler version, but I'll leave it up to you for what you think you should do.
Sure. Well, the whole reason it's there is for DMs to use it. So I guess we'll just go with the true version. Well,
All right.
basically, Eldoria is a continent that was a part of the world, a known part of the world with traffic and trade routes and cultural interconnectivity and everything. But then 1,000 years ago, it was disconnected from the rest of the world by a magical mists. No one knows where the mists came from or how they came. They just know that they can't travel through it anymore. Whenever ships try to travel through it, they get disoriented. They have no sense of direction. Those who actually make it out uh, thought they were still traveling the same way. Other ships just disappear in there. And it's been like that for 1,000 years at this point. Until one day a ship arrived, claiming to be from Eldoria, having texts and uh, artifacts and, well, basically proof that it actually had been to Eldoria. So it kind of sets off a gold rush of ships wanting to go there. And, well, they all disappear except for one that makes it back after about 20-25 years. And after it makes it back, it makes regular trips to and from Eldoria. It takes about 6 months for a full return trip, and it's been doing that for about 5-6 years at the point where the players enter the story, and they have managed to get a ticket to the ship, the Dawn Strider, and, well, that's basically where it is that the whole campaign starts.
Right. So this is one of the other interesting things about your campaign world is it's not just like a setting, but you're also within your Patreon providing a whole like set of adventures to go along with it that you're still developing,
Yeah,
but that so people can come in, get a full setting that is unique and interesting, and also get a full bunch of like adventures related to a main plot with a bunch of side quests in addition to the setting.
yeah, exactly. My plan is to completely populate the entire continent of Eldoria with quests and quest hooks and people and everything, so that eventually it'll be a fully explorable continent and with everything ready for dungeon masters to use if they want to use that. But if they don't, well, it can just be a setting.
Right. So the group comes in on the Dawn Strider to Eldoria, like a mysterious continent that the adventurers are ready to explore and find out more about.
Yeah,
And you said you were currently doing two groups of PCs for the within your own running of the campaign. You have two groups of players that are running through it.
yeah.
Are those separate, where they're each exploring like their own version of Eldoria, or are they actually in the same version and have like maybe an opportunity to interact with each other?
Well, it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because couple of weeks ago, they did have their first joint session where they actually had got to play together with each other.
Oh, awesome.
But we had to do it in a kind of multiverse type thing, because I tried running it as two separate groups arriving at different times, but it got too difficult to keep track of where one group had been on that particular date on when the others arrived there, and having them not meet each other in some weird way. So I decided after a couple of sessions to have them go through the exact same campaign, and then if they actually go through the same quests, then it'll be pretty much exactly the same for the both of them. Of course, with different routes and everything. But then they planted the idea of a joint session, and I went with that, and it was kind of a time vortex kind of thing where they got where they were thrown 150 years back in time in a time pocket, and then met each other there, and then they had to do a single quest, and once they finished that, then they were sent their own realities in time.
Okay, I see. I had done a similar thing for one of my campaigns where each of the players was running a character in two different parties.
Yeah.
And eventually they would occasionally meet, the two parties would meet. And I was tracking time, but occasionally it would be like, well, they should meet, but the other campaign is like 2 weeks behind. So we got to go play that campaign for 2 weeks to catch them up. And it got a little complicated for keeping them at like the same area and time, and it might have made more sense to not be tracking time that specifically and just kind of hand wave it.
Yeah.
And yeah, a time travel aspect to it makes it much easier to manage that, because then you don't need to bother.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, another thing I'm curious about for the player interaction that you've had with the two groups is, have they inspired you to include anything within the campaign that you've been building?
Oh yeah. When I'm writing, I'm a discovery writer. I don't know what I'm going to write. I'll just sit down and then I'll write something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same when I'm running a campaign. The best ideas that I have ever come up with is the one that I had no idea I would do when I started that particular session. An example would be the quest that both groups have actually just finished. They decided to go the same way after the few introductory missions, and with the first group, they came across a couple of direwolves in the forest that they were traveling through. Just as a random encounter, I actually rolled the dice at a random table to get an encounter, and then instead of fighting them as I had thought they would, they cast Speak with Animals. And then I had to come up with what would a couple of dire wolves say. And they mentioned something about a corruption in the forest. And I thought that sounded ominous. I hadn't really any plans with that. But then the players wanted to know more about that. And then I just had to come up with, well, can't you feel that there's something wrong in the forest? And then the druid said, yeah, I kind of feel it. Okay, great. If you travel further south, it'll become even worse. And that inspired me to create the whole Havenridge Cottage segment that is actually fairly finished in the second part of the campaign right now, which was, I think, a 6 or 7 session long quest for both parties to go through. And that just came from, well, them wanting to engage with the world.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always nice when you get those like sort of player generated adventures that you can expand on.
Yeah.
Then they get more engaged, and you can feel like you're making something that people like more.
Yeah, exactly. And these particular groups, they are bookworms, and I like writing, and I write books, in-game books for my players, and I've had to set a limit for them that they can only order 3 books per session that I'm going to write out for them. And it's always the books that I would never have written about. One of the previous monarchs of Eldoria was a mercantile kind of king, and he was called Julius the Golden, and he introduced capitalism to Eldoria, and that was just because one of the players who was a merchant asked, "Isn't there some kind of history book about some great big merchant?" in Eldoria. And then I just kind of had to wing that. And then he said, I want to buy a biography of him. All right. And then I wrote it for the next session. And then that kind of became law in the world.
You wrote a whole biography over like 1 week.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, they're small books.
That's still pretty cool. So a lot of the content that is on the Patreon is stuff that you're improvising for these initial 2 campaigns that you're running people through.
Basically, as I run through the campaign, that fills out the world, and when that fills out the world, then I write it out for other people to use. I have other plans and projects within the world that I'm preparing for my players to go through, but well, it's basically fill in as we go along.
Yeah, that is one thing I was curious about, is that from my reading of the campaign, it looked like it was a bunch of like sort of somewhat unconnected adventures, and I wasn't seeing a larger plot while reading it. And maybe I just missed something, but are you doing sort of a like here's the problem of the week kind of campaign, or is there like a broader plot that you are going to bring out or has come out that is just I missed?
Yeah, well, I've mentioned that I kind of overdo things sometimes or all the time. I have a multi-year plot going, and I've slowly been spreading breadcrumbs for the players as they go through it, and that was the kind of the spoiler thing that I was talking about. The whole plot about in the campaign is to figure out and stop whatever caused the mist.
Okay.
And they are going to figure out at some point, and one group has started to show a lot of interest in this particular thread. They're going to figure out that there was a ruler called Taldor Vex who ruled Eldoria in he kind of created the Eldoria that exists today. He introduced the calendar they're using, and he started a new calendar which was called the Year of Eldoria, YE. So he started his reign in 0 YE, and the world is now in 1007 YE. And they're going to figure out that he was a powerful sorcerer king who united the whole of Eldoria and then ruled and mysteriously vanished after 50 years. And around that time, the mists appeared too. All the players have received rumors that they've heard about the world, often contradictory rumors that they've heard. So they've all heard a little about him, and so whenever they hear that name, they want to know more, and they also ordered a biography of him. And that is kind of the that's kind of the official story about him. But some of them have started to figure out from other texts that they have read that official story might not be the real one. And long story short, they're going to figure out that not only did Taldor Vex cause the mists, he did it sort of say malevolently. He wanted to isolate Eldoria to have it as his own playground. He figured out a secret to immortality, and he has actually been ruling Eldoria for the past 1,000 years. And whenever there is a new monarch, well, that's just Taldor Vex putting on a new persona because he got bored with the old one. And as soon as the players are going to start making a fuss in Eldoria, because of course they're going to do that, then he's going to start to take an interest in them, and he's gonna challenge them just to see, are they fun? He wouldn't even consider them a threat. He would just try to tease them or something. I have just introduced a funny and cute, in my own opinion, NPC to one of the groups, one that I hope that they will like very much in the coming sessions. And when he approaches them and challenges them, he's gonna kick all their asses, and then he's gonna kill that NPC. And I kind of hope that will make them want to investigate him, because he's not going to say that he's Taldor Vex. He's just going to be a mysterious stranger. And well, that's basically it. They have to figure out how to beat him, and they have to figure out that he has been alive this whole time, wearing different disguises throughout the ages. And there are clues hidden in pretty much every historical law about all the different rulers and monarchs and historical uh, facts that I've written in the timeline.
Yeah, it does seem like a cool like villain and like plot idea that there's just this sort of trickster immortal that's been messing with the continent for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
One of the things I was curious about was why he would hide his immortality. It seems almost unnecessary given the level of power that you described him having.
That is actually kind of a running theme with some of my stories, or at least the stories that I find intriguing also. Kind of the guy who becomes so powerful that he gets bored with the world, and then he just does whatever he does just for fun. And to him, it would be more fun to hide his true power, just to see if people could figure it out. He doesn't think that anyone would ever be able to challenge him, so he wants to see what they would do with different versions of him, basically.
Okay. So it's just like this is what he does for entertainment.
Yeah. And then they're also going to find out that the fact that the players are there is because he got bored with the continent. So he created ways for people to navigate the mists in hope that someone would come that would be more fun, because he'd grown bored with the continent for the past 1,000 years.
I see. Well, I can't fault you for having just a villain that's bored. I've certainly used that as a plot device in my campaign once or twice. I was also curious about that character, whether you thought of him as like a self-insert into the campaign in some aspects.
Taldor Vex? Oh,
Yeah, because he's sort of like the creator of Eldoria and like influences all the different parts of it and the history of the campaign world. Um, Sort of like you are, like in a meta perspective.
well, if I did, it wasn't conscious. Uh, I, I, I don't know. It is not,
Okay,
not something that I've given any thought.
okay. So, but I'll count that as a no then.
Yeah, great. Usually, I'm very embarrassingly blunt about self-insertion, so I try to avoid that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's something that generally is tends to not go well unless it's like a sort of side character that's only there to kind of be cute.
Yeah.
Like I liked it in the Chronicles of Amber book series where like it's written by Roger Zelazny, so there's a character called Roger who is just like in one or two scenes and mentions, "Oh, I'm gonna go write my book now," and then he leaves, and it's like, "Oh, okay, there he goes."
Yeah. When I first started writing my novels about 14, 15 years ago, uh, I put myself in as the main character, and I think I've rewritten that book 15 plus times now, and the latest version of it that I'm rewriting is because I figured out that's the most boring hero in any book. So I just had to drag myself out of it and use something more interesting.
Yeah. Man, you never know though. I feel like there's some books that do work well as a self-insert.
Yeah, sure. I just can't do it.
Yeah, and that's also books, which is a bit different than RPGs, because RPGs is like a collaborative experience, and if you're inserting yourself as this like all-important character, like it can come off as sort of self-aggrandizing, but like Taldor Vex is also the villain, so I'm not sure it would necessarily come off that way once they realize that part of the plot.
Sure.
The players, of course,
Yeah.
being they in that sentence. Well, yeah. I was also curious about like for the within you coming up with ideas in the campaigns that you're running with the two groups of players you have now. How much you're revising and editing within what you're coming up with them before it ends up being on the Patreon release.
I tend to think of it as they are getting the kid version of what I've come up with, and then it kind of matures when they go through it, and it usually becomes much better. So I can even see that when one group has played through a mission, and then when the second group plays through it, then it's much better the second time because the first group added more details and more context and more hooks to grab onto, and then the second group rolls with that. So I kind of think it's ideal when I put it up on Patreon that I have had two groups go through it, because then it becomes much more dynamic than I was able to do it myself, and I think that's just great. I tend to leave it pretty open. I don't have anything very set in stone when I first start playing with them. So I think my tactic is that I'm counting on it being changed before I put it up on Patreon.
Okay. So it is typically getting a lot of more ironing out. Like when I'm writing something for just my group, for example, I'm usually writing like an adventure might have a page of notes compared to, like a published adventure where usually like a whole adventure has
Yeah,
24, 50, 100 pages of notes.
yeah, that's basically the same thing here,
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
except I maybe start out with 50 pages and then
Your handouts are impressive. I'll give you that for sure.
I can't help it, and I spoiled the group, so now they're demanded.
Um, well, I'm curious about for Eldoria, where what are the different races there?
This is one of the places where I was kind of lazy to begin with.
Uh-huh.
It's just the regular races. I haven't come up with anything else there, uh,
Okay.
because again, that's one of the things where I am just not that imaginary. Uh,
Well, I don't think that's a bad answer, actually. Like, I was curious because, like, it's a continent that's separate from Forgotten Realms, and some campaign settings have like, it's a different continent, so it has to have different races, but others don't, and it's fine, and it's not a big deal at all. What I was more getting at, not that it would be a different races for Eldoria, but if it was like just humans or
hmm,
just humans and elves or something like that.
yeah, there has been some, again, the players are great at provoking thoughts with me. So they actually asked, what race could I be that would be unusual over there? And then we kind of worked together and figured out that this is in session 0 before they arrived
Mhm.
and everything, when they were still deciding. And then I said that, well, if you want to be a dragonborn, that will be a rare race in Eldoria. It'll be mostly human, and then every other race will be represented, but there will be some that are almost gone from there, basically.
Okay. And then you described it initially as like Taldor Vex is the king of the whole continent. Is the continent still politically ruled by a king at this point, or is it like separated into a bunch of different nations and city states and kind of thing? What's the political organization now?
Well, the current is that 200 years ago, the last monarch of Eldoria was overthrown. Again, one of Taldor Vex's personas, and he just let himself be overthrown because, well, why not? And then he kind of decided, well, now I've been ruling Eldoria as some kind of monarch or ruler for 800 years. Now I want to see what happens when I don't interfere at all. Maybe I manipulate some a little bit here and there, but it'll be from the shadows.
Hmm.
So he had when he first started ruling, he had a council that was kept through all the monarchs. And when the last quote unquote monarch was overthrown, then the council kind of became the ruling body of Eldoria, and that became known as the court. And they are located in the largest city in Eldoria, Courtbridge town, Cortlin Castle, where they are now the ruling body. But they have begun to have uprisings, and basically they have cut off access to the whole western part of the continent, because that's the part of the continent that's revolting against them, because they are just focusing on getting rich. They have no consideration for anyone other than themselves. Well, basically a political corrupt system enforced by politically corrupt people. So that's the political situation in Eldoria at this point.
Okay, so it's still kind of a single kingdom, but now it's ruled by the court, who are the past nobles under Taldor, or whatever Taldor version there was.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's hear more about like what the different areas of Eldoria are then.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are, depending on how you will define it, between 5 or 7 major areas in Eldoria. The first one they come to is the Well Oak area, and it's named after the great big oak forest that's located in that part of the continent. That's in the southwestern corner of the continent. They arrive there into the town of Well Oak, where they are introduced to the game and to the world, and I usually start off by throwing a murder mystery at the group, just to, well, get things interesting from the get-go. Once they are done with the Well Oak area, they will move north, and I have kind of made a linear passage through the entire continent where they can choose to bypass that, but then it'll become more difficult for them. Some would say it would be more challenging and more fun, and it's open for the players who want to do that. But if they follow the linear path, then they will go from Well Oak to Pinewall Plains, which is a large road going from Well Oak to Courtbridge town. And when they get to the middle of that, they will reach the first major roadblock for them to progress further, because they will figure out that Courtbridge town has a very, very strict economical structure and culture, and if you can't fit in that, then you are not welcome. It's basically pay to win in the culture there, and you have to pay for your status, and if you can't pay, then you will go to a lower status in society, and if you fall enough in those ranks, then you'll be thrown out of the Courtbridge town area. And in the town that they come to in Pinewall Plains, called Thistlecross Town, there is actually a barrier where they have to pay for the right to enter the northern part of the continent.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting real literal here.
Yeah. They have to pay for passes. Basically, everyone has a badge on their chest showing their current financial rank. And if they don't have such a plaque or a badge, well, then you're not welcome. And they can choose to bypass it. They can try to sneak in, but that will be very difficult to get around. Again, some players would think that would be more fun. They can try to forge them or buy forged badges, and Thistlecross Town is ripe with criminal activity just because of that. So yeah, so that's the linear passage there. When there they can go after they've been introduced to Courtbridge Town. Then the next logical step would be to go to the Forbidden Woods, which is in the center. That has been magically sealed off by the court because for some reason the mists that are around Eldoria is also present inside the forest in the middle. So that's the place where they have cut off access to the whole western part of the continent. Of course, even though the mists are in the forest, there are roads that are safe to travel and have been safe to travel for 800 years. So that's not really the true story. It's because the revolution is happening on the western side of the continent, and they don't want the people on the eastern side. I'm getting those wrong. Sorry. The eastern part of the continent is blocked off, and they are on the western. Anyways, they don't want people to know that there is basically anything over on the other side of the continent. And once they get through the Forbidden Woods, they will get to the late stage areas where they can either choose to, well, partner up with the revolutionaries, they can decide to go off on their own, and the late stage is in the very northeastern part of the country, or the continent, where Taldor Vex's secret castle is, and that's where the final confrontation will take place too.
Gotcha. So, from what you said earlier, it sounds like along this path that you described, the two groups have largely been making the same decisions so far?
Yeah, by coincidence. I have not been trying to guide them through that, but they when they came to Willow Oak, I showed them the notice board. Again, I have made a real notice board with the real job offers and real texts and notes, and from the maybe 12 different mission hooks there, they both groups chose the same one.
Well, I guess that was the best one.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's pretty unusual. That whenever I've talked to other people that have run two groups through the same campaign, there's always been like differences that seem pretty significant.
Yeah,
and appears to be.
I think I might have influenced it by having the most monetary reward listed for that particular one. So they thought, well, we haven't got much money. How can we get some in a hurry? And then that was maybe the one that looked the most interesting.
Yeah, maybe. There's the trick for other DMs that want to force a player choice. Give them options, but one of them has the most money.
Yeah.
So your players have obviously not finished yet for what you're running through them at the moment. So I guess you don't have a conclusion yet for what they do with Taldor Vex or the Revolution.
No, my best guess is that they are maybe 3 to 4 years from the final confrontation with the raid they're going. They are very thorough and want to look in every nook and cranny and want to explore. So it takes a long time.
Yeah, I had a campaign that I was thinking would be 2 years, ended up being 4 years. It's always longer than you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Your DMing style seems to be very like prop focused, like with the books that you're writing, or the crystals, or the currency stuff that you're doing through the Patreon.
Yeah.
Do you have any more like interesting like mechanical ideas that you've brought into like within the game into Eldoria? Or are you using mostly the basic rules for that?
Well, they are minor adjustments, but I have made them so that they have a pretty significant impact on the players, because I really like when the players have intricate backstories. And the more detailed backstories they have, the more I include them in the main game and in the main campaign. One of the players asked if he could have a custom race, and he really wanted to be a treant. And we sat down and created a class for him to use. And
Okay.
well, So there's some homebrew stuff there. But then I also made treants not only part of the world, but the secret to Taldor Vex's immortality. So therefore, the treant player is going to have some specific powers and challenges that he has to go through. I don't know if that's where you were going with the question, but
No, that's a good answer for it. It makes me curious about what the party that doesn't have a treant is going to do.
yeah, that kind of threw me for a while. But I have had to come up with some interesting ways to come over that hurdle. Like the quest that they have both just finished. One of the corruption that they had to clear up from the forest. One of the main ingredients in a restorative potion that an alchemist that uh, accidentally caused that corruption 30 years ago. Uh, he had a recipe for a draft to cure the corruption, but he died before he could finish it. One of the reasons that he didn't finish it was because he couldn't find any seeds uh, or pieces of a treant. He needed some bark or some material from a treant, and well, that group had it, but then suddenly the other group didn't have that. So I had to come up with a creative way to do that. And one of the other places that I've made for a little bit later stage in the game is a secret grove of, well, basically like the Svalbard uh, vault in Norway, where they have seeds of every tree and plant in case of well, extinction. It's kind of like that,
Right, yeah.
where a, a sorcerer of some kind made a grove like that, a protective grove like that, several hundred years ago, and then they had to go collect a sample from there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Now I see why you were making the comparison to that vault. Man, we really hit most of the points I like to talk about for the campaign. Is there anything else that you feel like we missed or that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I could talk about it for a long time, but I think that we've covered the basics for anyone who would be interested. I think they would have heard what would make them interested at this point.
Well, how about you tell us like one sort of cool fact that someone might be surprised about in the world?
Well, one thing that I myself think is really cool is the expansive history of the world. I am quite a history nerd in real life too. One of my other passion projects is a YouTube channel where I do animated history videos too.
Oh,
So
cool.
naturally, I like to bring my history passion in here as well, and that's why I've made a whole 1,000-year timeline. That's why I make those biographies. And when I get those separate accounts, a biography of a king here, an old journal or historic text there, and they kind of reference each other, but do it in a way that is kind of mismatched, almost like it's a mistake on my part. But when you look at it, you actually find out that it's because of an unreliable narrator in the world. And then when they look closer, they actually find out that it's a clue for them to figure out. And then when they do that, it opens up a whole quest line for them. So it kind of rewards the players for being thorough, and it actually has uh, they actually have the ability to be thorough because the world is thorough and the history of the world is thorough.
So I feel like there are other campaigns and campaign worlds that are thorough, but you've taken like this extra step with the written books as an easy example, and like 1,000 years of history that I feel like is actually relevant because the players are eventually going to be interacting with the main force of that history.
Yeah,
So it feels like the books are more thorough and the history is more thorough than other campaigns that might not have the books because that's a lot of extra work to be doing, and the history not being necessarily as relevant. But I also feel like people, like DMs, can sort of bring their creative aspect to the game in ways that, or like lots of different ways. Like you've got a lot of cool stuff that is very easy to see, but I feel like one that I do that maybe doesn't get as easy to mention is like just making good playlists for each of the different villains. So like each of the different arcs in like an adventure will have a different little soundtrack that I'm playing.
mm,
But that's a little bit harder to like present to people.
yeah,
And maybe seems almost invisible to my players as well. They're not necessarily getting the differences in the music that I'm presenting or the ideas I'm trying to evoke with that.
yeah. I can see that.
Anyways, yeah, yes, I do agree. Your campaign is impressive. I really liked it when I was reading through it.
Yeah, I'm glad. One of the things that I am working the hardest on this is that you can pick and choose what you want. If a DM likes the world and the setting but doesn't like the whole Taldor Vex aspect of it, well, then there is still a 1,000-year timeline. There is still history with monarchs that he can then choose just to have actually been the real, true monarchs through there. And I want the DMs to be able to use it as much or as little and as freely as they want to. So I'm really working hard to make it uh, fit as many playstyles as possible and as many types of groups as possible.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that a lot of people don't realize they can do when they're taking someone else's work as a adventure or module campaign, whatever.
Mm.
That yeah, you can adjust it, you can take stuff out, you can add stuff in. Like I always have this vision in my mind that I have to follow the script when I'm doing a module, but
Mm.
that's absolutely not true. Like you can make changes whenever you want, and
Yeah,
it's it's fine. It's
yeah,
it's even good. Like if you're trying to make something that works better for yourself or the group.
yeah. I even encourage them in the guides that I write. Like even the first encounter they have on the Dawnstrider, where they get attacked by pirates, I directly write in, if you want to give your players a more challenging aspect or a challenging route here, well, then make sure that they are captured by the pirates or that they follow the pirates to their hideout, because then they will bypass the whole Pinewall Plains court bridge and go directly to the place where the rebels are. So they'll kind of bypass the whole first 4 or 5 parts of the campaign and go directly to part 6.
Yeah, that's a big skip.
Yeah, exactly. But then they will have another, well, entryway into the world, and it'll be different and maybe even better because of it. The murder mystery has several ways to both get stuck, get misled, or figure it out. And the 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 Haven Ridge Cottage quest, where they have to find a way inside the cottage, it's maybe not as expansively explained as I want it to be when I'm finished with it, but it'll have ways for players to figure it out entirely intellectually and avoid any fight if they want to. But the players can also just choose to go the murder hobo way and then just murder everything in their way, and then they'll still find the answers to the clues and to the riddles and everything. So I'm really trying to make it as easy for the dungeon master as possible to see that he can go in whatever direction he wants with it.
Oh, that's good. Even got support for murder hobo playstyles. Love it.
Well, I kind of had to. I was forced to consider that with the first group when we went through the murder mystery. I've actually made a video about that because it just shocked me so much. But the players just they weren't vibing with the whole mystery of it. They couldn't care less who murdered the mayor. And well, what do you do when they don't investigate? Well, one of my outcomes was that if the players take too long to solve it, then the murderer will actually frame the party. So they were framed quite well, in fact.
Ah,
So they were taken to the prison, and they were so frustrated and irritated at me at being arrested for that because they had already, in their mind, gone to the next town. They didn't want to be here anymore. So the next morning, I just released them and said, well, we figured out who the murderer was. And then because I was proud of the murder mystery, and then I began to explain it, well, as the character, as the captain of the guard. And he would explain that that guy did that because of that, and then he framed you because, and then one of the players just said, and I quote, yada yada yada. Can we please just go kill something now? And I just sat there completely dumbstruck. Uh, sure. So that's why in everything that I made since then, I've included a murder hobo route, just
oh,
just to not railroad them down the intellectual route if they want to go the other one.
yeah. I mean, it's too bad with the work you did on that, but yeah, you have to sort of know your audience as a DM and
Yeah,
know
then
when you can do that.
that's kind of what you figure out as you go along. But the second group, they loved it, and they figured it out.
Okay, good. You still got to have your fun.
Yeah,
Well, I usually finish off by asking if you have any advice for other DMs. I feel like we've been just doing that for the last 5 or 10 minutes here, but do you have anything else you want to say?
well, I can say some advice that helped me, and that is to really consider. Well, I guess we've touched on this as well, but it's just been the part that has struck with me the most. Really consider that Dungeons and Dragons is a collaborative game, and try to be open to as many possibilities as possible, because I think I can actually be honest and say that 100% of the times that something didn't go the way I had imagined it, it turned out better. So just be open for your players and for, well, things to escalate in a way that you didn't imagine.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's good advice. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Daniel. You want to shout out your Patreon or YouTube before we sign off?
Sure, thanks. Well, I'm called Masterful Dungeons pretty much everywhere. Sometimes with an S, sometimes without, depending on what was available. But on on Patreon, I have links for everything that I make on YouTube, TikTok, and everything that I make is free. The only reason I chose Patreon is because it has a free tier, so it's kind of a subscription where they can sign up to get more information. And of course, if they want to contribute, they're free to do so. But everything I make is completely free for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. It's a sort of a tip philosophy.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, cool. Thanks, Daniel.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Daniel tell us about Mists of Eldoria. The links for his content is in the episode description. Additionally, we're in June now, which is when the voting for the Crit Awards is. Crit stands for Creator Recognition in TTRPGs. So that's a way for lots of independent people to be recognized in RPGs. If you'd like to choose who gets that award, you can go vote for your favorite at critawards.org. That's critawards.org. And thank you for listening.